If I told you the most unbelievable moment of my life came from simply trying to help my nephew, would you believe me? I didn't expect it. I didn't plan it. And I swear I never thought it would go as far as it did. But when it happened, it cracked something inside me that I can't unfeel. It all started with a joke. An innocent, awkward, kind of ridiculous joke. One that, if you weren't there, might not even seem like much. He laughed. I laughed. We both shrugged it off. But that joke? It spiraled into something I never imagined. See, I always thought I was the kind of woman who knew where the line was. Who could sense danger from miles away? Who would never cross into that space where things get? But life has a way of surprising you when you're most vulnerable. And I was vulnerable. More than I realized. It's strange how being unseen for so long starts to feel normal. How you start shrinking just to fit into the silence around you. My husband, Dean. He hadn't really looked at me in years. Not with curiosity, or interest, or even familiarity. I had become furniture in my own life. Useful, quiet, fading. And then, Zane moved in. My nephew. 21. Bright eyes, easy smile, always humming some tune under his breath. He called me Auntie Lise with that same boyish charm he had as a kid, but now his voice was deeper. His presence. Different. I told myself it was just nice to have company. That's all. Someone who noticed when I made breakfast. Who asked how my day was. Who laughed at my terrible jokes and didn't walk out of the room mid-sentence. I thought I was being supportive. I thought I was helping him feel at home. But what happened next changed how I saw him and myself forever. Some lines blur slowly, almost gracefully, like dusk settling into night. You don't even realize the sun is gone until the dark is already wrapped around you. Other lines? They're crossed in a single breath. In the space between what's said and what's meant. And once you cross it, you can't uncross it, no matter how much you want to. And the worst part? Sometimes, you're not even sure if you want to. Before we dive in, please subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We uncover what lies beneath the surface. We explore the choices we never thought we'd make and the hearts we never thought we'd break. Stay with me. My name's Lisa. I'm 39. Married, but not really seen. Not really heard either. My husband, Dean, he works long hours. Comes home late. Eats dinner without tasting it. Talks like he's reading a list in his head. Sleeps facing the wall. There's no affection anymore. No warmth. No softness. Just routine. Quiet. Distance. Like I'm living with a shadow that used to be someone I loved. Sometimes, I catch myself standing in front of the mirror longer than I need to, wondering when I stopped being someone you'd want to touch. When did I become invisible? When did I start accepting it? And then came Zane. He's my nephew. 21. My sister's boy. She called one afternoon, said he got accepted into a college near us, and asked if he could stay with us while he found his footing. I said yes before she finished the question. When he arrived, he had that spark in his eyes. That energy young people carry before the world tires them out. He walked in with 2 duffel bags and a crooked smile that reminded me so much of his mother when we were kids. He hugged me like he meant it. Said, "Thanks for letting me crash here, Auntie Lise." That was the first time in a long time someone said my name with kindness in their voice. He was polite, respectful, but he also paid attention to things Dean hadn't noticed in years. Like when I changed my hair. Zane noticed. Said it looked fresh. When I cooked his favorite meal, he made a big deal out of it. Asked for seconds. Cleaned the plate. Told me I made him feel at home. I hadn't felt like home to anyone in a long time. He made the house feel different. Not louder. Just warmer. He laughed in the kitchen while helping with dishes. He asked questions like he really wanted to know the answers. How was your day? Did you always want to live here? Were you ever in love with someone before Uncle Dean? That one caught me off guard. He smiled when he asked it. Casual. curious. But something in me paused before I answered. I told him, yeah, once. But it didn't work out. He looked at me for a moment, just a second longer than normal, and nodded like he understood something I hadn't said out loud. At night, I'd hear his music through the walls. Low volume. Always something soft, soulful. Sometimes I'd lean against the doorframe and listen, telling myself I was just checking if he'd fallen asleep. But the truth? I liked being near that sound. It reminded me I wasn't completely alone in that house. Dean barely noticed he was even living with us. Barely acknowledged him. Zane would try, he'd say, "Hey, Uncle Dean," when Dean walked in. Dean would nod, sometimes grunt a reply. But that was it. No real connection. The contrast between them, it was impossible to ignore. Dean was a ghost. Zane was alive. And slowly, something in me started to wake up too. The house always felt cold lately, not just the walls, but the silence. But when Zane was around, it felt like someone had opened the windows again. Let the air back in. I hadn't felt seen in years. Not until he started looking. It started during a laundry mishap. I'd just finished sorting Dean's work shirts and a load of towels, and without thinking, I pulled a pile from the dryer. Some of it wasn't mine. T-shirts. Boxers. A pair of athletic shorts. Zane's. I realized too late I'd mixed our clothes together. I was folding everything absent-mindedly when something slipped out, a pair of his underwear. Not folded, just crumpled in my hand. But it was heavy, stretched. I paused, confused, then turned it slightly and my heart skipped. There was a bulge, a presence. Even though it was just fabric, there was no mistaking the shape. I don't know why I froze. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was the realization that I was holding something I had no business seeing. But what startled me more was the warmth that bloomed in my chest. Not desire, not yet. Just surprise. Confusion. Curiosity. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Zane stood in the hallway, towels slung over his shoulder, still damp from the shower. He looked down at what I was holding, then up at me. Neither of us said a word. I quickly stuffed the underwear back into the pile, my face burning. He scratched the back of his neck, gave a nervous laugh, and said, thanks for doing the laundry. I nodded too quickly, muttered something like, yeah, no problem, and walked past him. My heart was racing, but I didn't know why. It wasn't just the size. It was the silence in the room afterward. We both saw it. We both felt it. We both said nothing. That night at dinner, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I made spaghetti. Dean scrolled through his phone between bites, as usual. Zane complimented the sauce, said I'd outdone myself. I smiled, grateful for the distraction. Then, out of nowhere, he made a joke. He said, I was talking to this girl in my class, and somehow we got on the topic of size. She asked me if I was, packing. He laughed awkwardly, then added, I told her I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. Dean didn't even flinch, just kept scrolling. But me? My fork paused halfway to my mouth. I looked at him, and he looked right back. There was a glint in his eye, mischievous, but uncertain. Like he was testing something. Testing me. I chuckled. Lightly. Said, well, I guess there are worse things to be known for. It came out more playful than I meant it to. More personal. More suggestive? He grinned. True. Then he looked down, chewing, but I saw his jaw tighten just slightly. Like he wasn't sure what I meant. Or maybe he was, and he was waiting to see what I'd do next. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying the moment in the hallway. The heat on my skin. The way his eyes lingered, not out of arrogance, but something else. Like he wasn't sure what he was feeling either. I told myself I was overthinking it. That it was nothing. That I was just starved for attention, and this was me projecting something that didn't exist. But deep down, I knew better. Because there was a shift. A subtle one. A pause too long. A joke delivered too carefully. A glance held just a second more than necessary. Was I reading too much into it? Or was there something unspoken between us? I couldn't unsee it. And worse, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not just what I saw in the laundry, but how I felt afterward. The heat in my face, the way my breath caught, the shame that followed, the curiosity that never left. It wasn't just about him. It was about me. I'd been living in a shell. A marriage that used to be full of laughter, touches, stolen glances across the kitchen, had become cold, quiet, routine. Dean hadn't kissed me on the lips in months, and when he did, it felt like an obligation, like brushing teeth before bed. No warmth, no wanting, just function. So when Zane looked at me, really looked, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Seen. And it scared me. I told myself I was being dramatic, that it was just a phase, just a moment of weakness, that I was human, that I was just curious, just observing. He was family, but not by blood. My sister's son, yes, but I hadn't raised him. We didn't grow up in the same house. He wasn't mine. Not really. I told myself that made it different. Did it? Does it? I'd catch myself watching him. Not in a creepy way. Just noticing how his back curved as he leaned over the sink. The way his laugh came from his chest. How his confidence wasn't cocky, it was gentle. Like he didn't know how attractive he was. Or maybe he did, but didn't use it the way other young men might. I hated that I noticed, but I didn't stop. I tried avoiding him. I started taking my coffee upstairs. Skipped dinner once or twice. Said I had work when I didn't. But then, he came to me. He knocked on the door one evening, holding a mug of tea he made for me. Chamomile. My favorite. Said he remembered I liked it. I thanked him, and as I took the mug from his hands, he lingered. Looked unsure. Then said, "Can I ask you something kinda awkward?" I hesitated, then nodded. Sure. He scratched his neck, avoiding my eyes. I've had a few girls tell me I'm too big. Down there. He laughed nervously, face red. I know that sounds like some guy bragging. But I'm not. I swear. It's actually become a problem. I didn't say anything. He looked at me, eyes vulnerable. I don't know how to talk about this with anyone else. You're the only one who makes me feel like I'm not being judged. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him to stop, that this wasn't a conversation we should be having. But I didn't. Instead, I listened. He told me how he'd been turned down, how some girls got nervous, how one even laughed when things got intimate, then ghosted him completely, how it made him feel like a freak, like his body was something to be ashamed of. And I listened. Too closely. I offered comfort, reassurance. I told him it wasn't his fault, that it was about compatibility, not shame. I said it softly, my voice warmer than it should have been. I said it like I was holding something fragile in my hands. Because I was. He looked at me like I'd given him something he didn't know he needed. And I felt it too. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My tea untouched on the nightstand. My heart pounding with something I didn't know how to name. It wasn't lust. Not entirely. It was attention. Intimacy. The ache of being wanted. The hunger of being noticed. I wanted to stop thinking about it. About him. About us. About what us even meant. But I couldn't. And that scared me more than anything. One night, I went downstairs to warm some milk. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts had become a loop, quiet, heavy, endless. And there he was. Zane. Standing in the kitchen. Shirtless. Steam rising from the kettle behind him. He didn't flinch when he saw me. He just smiled, soft and sleepy-eyed. Like he'd been waiting. Or maybe like it was just chance. He said, "Couldn't sleep either?" I nodded. Walked to the counter. But I couldn't stop looking at him from the corner of my eye. He looked different in that moment. Not just older. Not just physically. But still composed. comfortable in a way I hadn't seen in any man around me for a long time. He poured tea into 2 mugs, handed one to me without asking. Chamomile again. I figured this might help, he said. I took it. Our fingers brushed. It was a moment that should have passed like any other. But it didn't. He leaned against the counter and took a sip, then looked at me. Not just glanced, looked. Do you think something's wrong with me? He asked quietly. I furrowed my brow. Why would you say that? He stared into the steam. The size thing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's made things hard. Girls either get scared or they treat me like I'm some kind of joke. And I try to laugh about it, but he didn't finish the sentence. I didn't want to say the wrong thing, but I also couldn't pretend I didn't understand what he was really asking. So I said, gently, there's nothing wrong with you, Zane. Sometimes people don't know how to handle what's different. But that doesn't mean you're broken. He turned his face to me slowly. It's just hard to feel normal sometimes, he said. To feel like someone can accept it. I smiled, though it trembled. The right person will. He nodded, then laughed under his breath. You always know what to say. And that's when it happened. My hand was resting near the sink. He reached to put his mug down, and his hand touched mine. Accidental. Maybe, but neither of us moved. Not at first. His fingers rested over mine for a beat too long. Just enough to be noticed. Not enough to call it anything. I pulled my hand back gently. Said nothing. He didn't apologize. Just watched me. Eyes soft. Still. Holding something quiet behind them. I told myself I was helping. That he needed reassurance. That I was offering the kind of comfort a young man, lost between boyhood and manhood, couldn't get from his peers. I told myself it was guidance. But even as I thought it, I didn't believe it. We stood in silence for a while, the tea cooling between us. Eventually, he said, "Good night, Annelise." And I nodded. "Good night, Zane." He walked past me, slowly. His shoulder brushed mine. Light. Gentle. Like it could have been avoided. But it wasn't. I stayed in the kitchen long after he left. Mug in my hand. My heart too loud in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. That I was being dramatic. That it was just a strange moment and we'd both forget about it. But that night, he came to my room. Not for anything. Just to talk. That's what I told myself. He knocked once. Softly. I was already awake. The clock said 1:17 a.m. I sat up, heart already tight in my chest. "Come in," I said, barely above a whisper. The door creaked open. Zane stepped in, quiet, shirt hanging loose over his frame, hair tousled from sleep. Or maybe from pacing. I couldn't tell. He didn't say much at first. Just stood there like he wasn't sure if he should have come at all. Then he said, "I couldn't sleep. Mind won't shut up." I nodded. "Yeah. I know the feeling." He walked over slowly, then sat at the edge of the bed. Careful. Like he was trying not to take up space. I pulled the blanket around my legs and leaned back against the headboard. We talked. About nothing at first. School. Music. The class he hated. The girl who ghosted him. Again. He laughed a little. I laughed too. But it felt strange, laughing there, in the dark, so close to the edge of something neither of us was naming. Then he went quiet. I asked, "You okay?" He nodded, then shook his head. I don't know. I feel weird lately." I waited. He looked down at his hands. Then he said, so quietly I almost missed it, "You make me feel safe. Like I'm not weird. Like I can be myself." My breath caught. He didn't look at me when he said it. But I looked at him. And I saw everything. The boy he was. The man he was becoming. The confusion. The ache. The need. And I knew I should have said something. Drawn a line. Redirected. Pushed him gently away. But I didn't. I reached over. Put my hand on his. Just for comfort. Just for warmth. That's what I told myself. He turned his hand and held mine. Then he leaned forward and hugged me. It was soft, gentle, meant to be innocent. But it wasn't. His arms wrapped around me tighter. His breath warmed near my neck. My hand rested on his back and didn't move. Then, he kissed me. Not on the lips. Just a kiss on the cheek. But it lingered. Longer than it should have. And I let it. He pulled back just slightly, eyes searching mine. Waiting. Not pushing. Just waiting. And in that moment, the room went silent. But everything inside me was loud. The guilt. The longing. The questions. The hunger. The fear. I didn't stop him. But I didn't ask for it either. So whose fault was it? His, for stepping over the line? Or mine, for never drawing it to begin with? The next morning, everything was the same. But nothing felt normal. The sun rose like it always did, spilling soft light through the kitchen window. The coffee brewed. The floor creaked under my steps. But there was a weight in the air, thick, invisible, choking. I went through the motions. Toast. Eggs. Fruit on the counter. Trying to keep my hands busy. My thoughts distracted. Zane didn't come downstairs right away. Usually, he was the first to shuffle in barefoot, hoodie on, always with a sleepy good morning, Auntie Lee's, and a grateful smile. But that morning, nothing. Just silence from upstairs. Dean walked in eventually, gave a tired nod, sat at the table, face in his phone like always. He didn't notice the missing presence at first. Or if he did, he didn't say. I stood at the sink, scrubbing a perfectly clean plate, over and over again, just to stay moving. When Zane finally appeared, it was different. He didn't meet my eyes. He mumbled morning without the usual warmth, without looking up. Walked to the fridge like a stranger passing through. Got orange juice. Poured one glass. Not two like he usually did. No shared breakfast. No small talk. No jokes. Just cold silence. And I was overly polite. Too careful with my words. Too sweet with my tone. Like I was trying to glue something back together without admitting it was ever broken. I asked if he had class. He nodded. Said yes, barely audible. I asked if he slept well. He said yeah. No eye contact. Dean looked up then. Briefly. Watched Zane. Watched me. There was a flicker. Something behind his eyes. Not quite suspicion. But a pause. Like he was sensing a change he couldn't name. Then, just like that, he went back to his screen. Zane sat at the far end of the table. Ate quietly. Left early. And I stood by the counter, clutching a mug I wasn't drinking from. I tried to act normal. Tried to pretend it hadn't happened. That the touch, the kiss, the weight of that moment wasn't still clinging to the corners of the room like smoke. I tried to wash it away. With dishes. With sweeping. With folding clothes I didn't need to fold again. But his absence in the kitchen said everything. He was pulling away. And I was left with the echo of what we didn't say. Was I wrong for helping him feel whole? Or was I just selfish? I keep asking myself that. Was I offering comfort to someone who needed it? Or was I feeding a hunger I hadn't admitted was there? Would it have happened if Dean had noticed me? If he'd kissed me like he used to? If he'd held my face and said, I still see you, even once in the last year? Would it have happened if Zane hadn't looked at me like that? With softness. With need. With something that felt like recognition. Like he was seeing through all the layers of who I'd become and still wanted to reach for the person underneath. Or, was it already inside me? Was I just waiting for anyone to look close enough? To listen long enough? To make me feel like I still existed? That night didn't feel like betrayal when it happened. Not in the moment. It felt like breath after drowning. Like touch after years of being untouched. It felt human. But now it sits in my chest like a stone. Heavy. Cold. Silent. I replay it all, again and again. The touch. The pause. The choice I didn't make, but didn't stop either. And I wonder, what does that make me? I don't know what's worse, what happened, or that I don't regret it. Not entirely. Not yet. Have you ever wanted something, only to realize you were never meant to have it? Something that felt warm in your hands, but burned the moment you held on too tight? I ask myself that every night now. Was I wrong for saying yes, even in silence? Or was I just finally honest about what I felt? About what I'd been needing for so long, but never dared to admit? Please tell me in the comments. Was it betrayal? Or just two broken people reaching for comfort in the only way they knew how? Because I don't have the answer. And maybe someone else does. And if you believe these stories need to be told, if you've ever felt torn between what's right and what's real, then like this video. Subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart, one confession at a time. Sometimes, the greatest betrayal isn't to another person. It's to the part of yourself that knew better. The part that whispered, don't. The part you silenced because it was quieter than the ache. Desire doesn't always wear red lipstick and heels. Sometimes it wears a thank you, a gentle smile, a midnight knock on your bedroom door. It doesn't scream. It whispers. Soft, careful, just loud enough to pull you away from who you used to be. And if you're not careful, one innocent moment, one almost, can echo for a lifetime. And some echoes you never outrun.